Hello, everyone. I'm Laurel Staples, and today we're talking about wildfire protection for utility companies, the focus of a House bill in Helena before lawmakers. Reporter Zeke Lloyd is following this bill and just posted a new story on it in the Montana Free Press. And Zeke joins me today via Zoom to walk us through this measure. And welcome, Zeke. Good to see you again.
It's great to be back. Thanks for having me.
All right. So go ahead and what does House Bill 490 do?
Right, it's certainly a wonky one. So the bill was kind of born out of the reality of wildfires, which the fact that they can destroy a lot of land all at once and a lot of property value or other kinds of value, they're really hard to prevent, especially in the last few years. We've seen larger and larger wildfires that are getting just more and more destructive. So this is kind of a lot of the folks who are involved in paying for wildfires when they do happen, trying to figure out exactly who's going to pay based on the circumstances in which the wildfire starts. So it was brought by the utilities company. So NorthWestern Energy and Montana's cooperatives, electric cooperatives, brought kind of a few different ideas on how to delegate, okay, if a utility company does start a wildfire, how do we decide if they're liable or if that's just unavoidable? Because wildfires can start really easily in the summer months, even if a utility takes a lot of extra steps. So the name of the game here is something called strict liability. Essentially, it's this idea that no matter how much a company does to prevent something from going wrong, it doesn't matter. If something goes wrong, the blame, the liability is going to be on them because what they're doing is just that dangerous. So let's say there's a mining operation. Deep sea mining is a good example of strict liability. It's just so inherently dangerous that no matter how many precautions you take, if something goes wrong, the liability is going to be on you. So what utility companies are worried about is strict liability applying to starting a wildfire. So in California, if a wildfire starts and it does a bunch of damage to your property, and you say, hey, I think that a utility company caused this wildfire, you don't have to prove that they were necessarily even doing anything wrong. You just have to prove that they started the fire. That strict liability applies, and they're going to have to pay for those damages. So in Montana, we do not have strict liability, but utility companies are worried that that could become the precedent. So what they say is, hey, we've brought Bill 490, House Bill 490, and we're just going to make sure strict liability doesn't become the precedent in our state. And as a part of that, we, as the utility companies, are going to set up a system of wildfire mitigation plans. So we're going to still do our part to try our best. But if we do start a wildfire, you're not only going to have to prove that we started it, but also that we were acting negligently, that we didn't follow those plans, and that it really, therefore, is our fault and we should have to pay for it.
So it sounds like it changes the whole legal framework for this. What are some of the examples, incidents that apply to this in Montana?
Yeah, it's a great question because we have a lot of great examples from out of state, Oregon or California, really large wildfires that these utility companies are saying, whoa, look at these big fires that happened on the West Coast. We're nervous about those. But the big Montana example is the West Wind fire, which happened in 2021 in Denton, Montana, and it leveled pretty much the entire town. I don't remember the exact number of structures lost, but I think it was above 25, 16 square miles burned, and a huge amount of property damage. And so a lot of people actually who were in that fire came to have a word on this bill during its testimony during the public hearing a Wednesday of last week. That's the 26th. And they were a little bit concerned that maybe this bill is going a little bit too far, that maybe this is giving too much protection to the utility companies, and that they have an experience that they would say, well, we had to kind of litigate against a utility that started a fire, and it was already really difficult. And 490 is just going to make it more difficult. So they brought a little bit of opposition relative to that Montana fire that happened just a few years ago.
And how did the other side counter that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the co-ops, the electric co-ops, had a really good point during that testimony in response to that, which is we want to do everything we can to prevent wildfire, and that's why we're developing these wildfire mitigation plans. But if you're saying that we're going to be strictly liable, we can't afford that. We have no way to bring electricity to rural parts of Montana. A lot of these electric co-ops don't have the kind of deep pockets to be able to pay for some of these massive damages that might be caused. So they're saying we want to do our best. We're going to do our best, but if we do our best and something still goes wrong, we're just going to go out of business and we're not going to be able to give people power. And so it's really just both sides trying to balance this need where, even rural Montana has pretty good power access right now. And a lot of the energy companies, utility companies are saying, we want to maintain that. And this is going to enable us to maintain that. While people on the other side are saying, well, the way you wrote the bill, it doesn't seem like it's very fair. And you're maybe giving yourself a good deal.
Interesting. So, in your coverage of this, what are some of the other big takeaways here?
Well, the other major player here are insurance companies. So let's say that there's a massive fire, wipes out a huge amount of property, and you say, "Hey, I know that a utility company caused this fire," and so you're kind of bringing that against them. So insurance companies ultimately, when you first kind of have your entire house or property burned down, they're going to pay you. And they're going to say, right, you had a plan. We're paying you because this incident happened and you have insurance. Now, if the utility company is actually at fault, then the insurance company, after they pay you for the damage to your property, is going to say, "Hey, look, really, this is the utility company's fault. We're going to charge the utility company because they caused this whole mess." So insurance companies are interested to make sure that they're still able to collect that money if a utility company causes the fire. So they want to make sure that they can still it's a process called subrogation. They want to make sure that they can still subrogate in the event of a, drastic incident, and they're able to collect that money from the utility companies. If this has too much, if they find or if they think that this has too much of a protection for those utility companies, then the insurance company is going to end up paying out and not actually be able to get that money back for the actual cost of the fire from the utility company that maybe potentially initially caused it.
All right, so a lot going on with this measure. What's next for the bill?
Well, the bill is actually being debated right now. This week, we were maybe going to see some action on it. Early in the week didn't happen. Right now, all those parties are hashing it out. I got to say, I spent a lot of time in the legislature, and this one, I've seen a lot more debate and a lot more work on the bill, a lot of amendments from step zero to now. So obviously, it's a House bill. It started in the House. The committee, we saw a lot of people speak on the bill, made it through the committee, passed out of the House pretty well. When it comes over to the Senate, which it did just about a week and a half ago, there were still a lot of people voicing some pretty strong opposition to it, whether that's technical concerns or whether that's pretty substantial anxiety about how it might shift liability in its philosophy. So we saw a lot of debate just last week. And right now, Representative Amy Regier, who's out of the Flathead, who's carrying the bill, is currently hashing that out with a lot of the stakeholders. At the end of the Wednesday hearing a week ago, we saw one of the senators, Senator Manzella, kind of said, well, she said this almost verbatim, "If I had to vote on this bill now, I'd say no, but I really believe that the bill sponsor is going to work with the involved parties and find a solution that works for everyone." And from what I've heard, we haven't seen action yet, but what I've heard over the last few days is that's exactly what's happening now, and it could be very, very soon that we see this bill make it to the next step, although it might be very, very different than it is now.
All right. Well, we'll continue to follow along with your reporting and your updates on this bill. Is there anything else that you'd like to share?
No, it's interesting to see so many players involved, and while a lot of people want to, make this sound like, oh, this is a really big deal, we really need to be paying attention to this. And as journalists, I don't like to adhere to what my sources are telling me too much, but this is a really big deal, and this is going to set a precedent that's going to have enormous impacts in Montana specifically, especially as we're now gearing up for the 2025 fire season. So this is going to be very quickly applicable to situations and incidents happening right here in Montana just in the next few months. So it's a big deal.
All right. Well, we'll follow along. And when will your next story come out? Do you know?
Oh, we're always working on something. So actually should have something coming out on Friday, April 4th. So
okay, we'll watch for that. Okay, absolutely. Thank you so much, Zeke. Great report. And we'll talk to you again soon.
It's great to be here. Appreciate you.